This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we can start now. So every one of you, please mute from your end. So last class we were discussing about the concept of inheritance and all, like the basic OOPS concepts, like what are classes, what are different types of classes, and what is inheritance concept. All this we were discussing about, and after that we have seen how to have the inheritance relationship for between framework application class group and implementation application class group, where we have chosen framework application class group as a parent to the implementation application class group. So today we are going to start looking at the practicals related to user interface. So first let's go ahead the technical aspects, and now how it works in any of the application, any of the technologies when you are developing business applications, where the business applications are going to have user interface and the business logic and the backend database and tables. So generally how the interaction happens in a web application, in a regular day-to-day web applications that we see. Let's say for example, to take Amazon application. Suppose if you are going to register on Amazon application, just by providing your data to create a new account in Amazon website. So where you are going to get a form. So in the form you are going to provide your basic details, including address details and all. So after you provide your personal details and address details, there will be a button, let's say create account. On click of the button create account, the data is going to get stored into the backend table. Data is going to get stored into the backend table. So that will be storing next time when you are going to access Amazon application and log into Amazon application by using your email, it will recognize you as a registered user. If anyone not audible, reconnect. All others can hear me. Okay, so this is about typically how it works whenever you are going to access a form. As a human, we access software applications by using user interface. So there will be a UI displayed. We are going to access the UI and we are going to interact with the application through UI. And in the UI, we are going to input the data, and on click of some buttons or something, it is going to get stored into backend tables. So now the data what you enter in the forms, let me go ahead and show some forms here. Let's say for example, here you go, Facebook registration or Amazon registration. Okay, so here you go, you wanted to create a new account and there are multiple steps. Okay, I have already logged in. Okay, Facebook, let's go ahead, Facebook sign up, or you can even see Gmail sign up, anything. Okay, if you go to create new account, this is the form that they're providing. So here you enter the data in the form, and after you enter all this data and click on sign up, so what happens is this data is going to get stored into Facebook database. So now here you go with the diagram. See, whenever we are going to access UI means HTML. So in the UI, whatever that you are seeing here, these are called controls. So this is a text input control, this is text input control, and this is called as drop down control for your information, and this is called as radio button control. This one, male, female, what you see, these are called as radio buttons, and this is the button control. So now in the UI, whenever we are going to access and provide the data through the controls and we submit it, once we submit, data will get stored into backend. Then how the data will go to backend? Generally, if we want to access any database, we need to write queries. So how do you interact with the database? We are going to use queries, and when queries, SQL queries, are going to hit the database, a database can understand SQL queries. UI can understand the data and HTML related stuff. Now, the data which you have entered in the UI, it has to go and get stored into this particular backend tables. If it has to get stored into backend tables, queries should be written. So generally in other programming languages, suppose if you are working on Java, if you are working on maybe C#, .NET, and or VB.NET, or any business logic related technologies you are using, okay, along with UI and database, the queries have to be manually written by the developer in the respective programming language what they are using. But here, well, when we come to Pega, there is no need to write any queries. So we have already discussed during the demo class, the user interface or the backend queries or the business logic. Nothing has to be written by the developers. It will get automatically generated by Pega. So no coding when we are working with Pega. So now the data that we have submitted here, all the data which we have submitted in the HTML forms will be converted into queries along with values what you have given in the UI, and that will be stored into table. So now how the data is going to flow from user interface into database to the queries, that is in between there will be a business logic. Let's say you are using Java, you are using .NET, or you are using VB, or you are using any programming language. So now the HTML user interface is going to interact with the business logic that we write by using any programming language. Well, you come to Pega, we need not to write any programming language. Automatically programs are going to get generated. So now something in the programming language should hold the data. So the data what we are submitting, the data what we are submitting in the HTML form, it has to be held. It has to be held by something in the programming language. Well, you go to programming language, we have a concept called variables. In the programming language, we have a concept called variables. Okay, let me tell you what is a variable in general in a programming language. Any programming language, it is not related to Pega alone. Okay, any programming language I am going to talk about. Okay, so variable in programming language. What is a variable? So variable is an entity in the programming language which holds a value. Okay, and it will have some memory also. Memory space is being occupied. Okay, so in the memory, this variable is going to have some space being occupied. So leave about memory. Coming to this one, variable is something which is going to hold a value. So when it will hold a value at application runtime, it is going to hold the value. Means application running is completed, execution is completed, variable after some time variable may not have that particular value being held. So now variable is an entity which is going to hold a value at application runtime. So now a variable is going to hold different types of values. Let's say integer values. These are just basics of any programming language. Integer value like this 10, 15, like this, or it can be a decimal value. Okay, means 10.5, okay, 33.4, like this, or it can be a string value, means okay, Harsha, like this. So these are the string values. So like this, a variable can hold, or it can hold a date value. Okay, date value. So let's say 12 2021. Okay, like this, it can hold a date value. So now a variable is an entity which holds a value at application runtime. During the application is running, variables are going to hold the values. the data which we enter in the UI fields, user interface fields, this data is going to be held by variables. Variables will be there in the programming languages. So now variables, the data that it is holding, it will be framed like a query. So the values of the variables will be taken and a query will get framed in the programming language. That queries are going to hit the backend tables and data is going to get stored. Okay, everyone clear? So whenever you are working on any programming language, you need to write or implement everything related to all of this, what you're seeing, UI, variables or business logic and query preparation, opening database connections. But when you're working with Pega, see here, the business logic and all you need not to create. Variables you may have to create, but business logic you need not to create. So here, what we have discussed about the variables, that variables, what we call in Pega, specifically the terminology is properties. So we call them as properties. So properties are the ones which are going to hold values during the application runtime. So how do you create property and all? I will show you practically later. But as of now, just for our information and understanding, we need to know what is a property. A property is just like an entity. It is going in the business logic, which is going to hold a value during the application runtime. Okay, let me show you a few properties that Pega provides. Okay, hold on. Here you go. Don't bother about navigations for now. You will be learning about the navigations later. Just hold on. Okay, let's say this is one property. Look at here. Just let it get loaded. See, this is one property where this property can hold a text value because the property type is text. Okay, so variable is going to hold different types of values like integer, decimal, string value, date value, like that, right? So property is similar to a variable, what we call in other programming languages. Property is going to hold a value. Property can hold any of these type of values. So the type of value that it holds, we refer it by called property type. Property type can be text or integer, something like that. Let me go ahead and show you. Don't bother about navigations at all. Just try to understand the concept because these are very basics. Many of you might already know about all these things in other programming languages, but still focus here and try to understand this one in Pega. Okay, if I'm going to create a property, let's say with the name first name, and here you go, property type text. By default I can change it. So I can change this to date or date time or double value, means decimal value, or integer value, true false, only either true or false that it can hold. Password type, like this, anything you can choose accordingly the property type. Okay, and there is another one. So it is called UI control. See, if I click the down arrow here, there are so many UI controls available. See, we would be using these properties in the design of the UI. Then how this property should be visible in the UI will be decided by this UI control. I'll come back to UI control once again and I'll explain you in few minutes. Just only bother about you are going to have properties. Created properties are going to hold the values at during the application runtime. We will be creating properties before we wanted to use it in the application, and where the property is going to have the property type. So just keep this property aside. Let's come to UI and we will discuss about user interface. Okay, so I will log into existing application which is related to other batches, and thereafter we can go ahead and proceed to see. Oh, 8.6 I am teaching only for you, right? Started with you, so I cannot log in. Anyhow, no problem. I'll go to OOTB, what is provided by Pega in the user interface part. Okay, let's see here. Dev Studio, just for instance, don't bother about navigations at all. You need not too much worry about the navigations as of now. You'll be learning in future. So here you go. So I'm going to open one user interface that is provided by Pega. So how Pega provides, the same way we need to go ahead and create and make use of it. Just look at here. I will also show you in our application. So this is the UI. So in these three layers, UI, business logic, and database, we are going to initially focus on user interface. So we are going to work on UI, that is how to create a form, and we are going to also use process. Process means flow chart, flow diagram. Okay. So the user interface, what you are seeing here, this is the runtime environment. So runtime means when it is loaded into browser, it looks like this. And this is design environment. During the design, it looks like this. So during the design, what you are seeing here, these are called controls, as I have already told you, text input controls, and these are some tabs and buttons controls. Okay, so these are the UI controls. See, whenever I am going to enter the data in this control, as I have already told you some time back, so once you enter the data and click on submit or some buttons, this data will get stored into table. So when I say this data is going to get stored into table, between, I have told you, the data what you enter in the UI form will be held by variables. That is, in case of Pega, it is properties. So any control that you are seeing here in the UI design, if you go to properties of this, do not bother about navigations at all. Just focus on the concept, please. Let it get loaded. See here, this control is associated with a property. See here, if I click the down arrow, I can see so many properties, but don't bother about all. What was already there, I'm just keeping it back. So this control is associated with one property. So where is this property? This property should be already available in Pega. Look at here, this property is there in some class. We need not to bother about what is the class and all. So now this property has to be, this control is being mapped with property. So every control that you see here in the UI. So whenever you are going to create user interface, you are going to add the controls in the UI. Most of the controls that are going to take the data from the customer, I mean like from the users, will be mapped to properties, and which means that in the UI there is a link between user interface control and property. So any data that we enter at runtime in this control will be held by property. Which property? The property which is been associated with this UI control. Everyone clear with this point? So every user interface control is going to be associated with one property. Okay, any UI control which is going to accept the input data from the customers is going to be associated with one UI control. So here in this case, the UI control, any UI control is going to have one property being associated. The data which you enter here is going to be held by this property. So what you are seeing currently is all Pega provided. We are going to learn to see how to create these properties by ourselves. So we will not deal with PRPC provided on from the beginning classes itself. Okay, we can go ahead and create anything by ourselves. We will be practicing in a way that we are going to create properties by ourselves, and we are going to create user interface by ourselves and utilize it in our business application. Okay, everyone clear? Every one of you. So far, everyone clear? Someone can unmute and respond.
Yeah,
Okay.
creating our own property in this, which is not there in the list, right?
Yes, which is not, see, it is very simple. Anytime if you wanted to create something on PRPC, first you should know whether it is already there provided by Pega or not. If it is already provided by Pega, why you need to create? No need to create. So you need to create only when in case if it is not provided by Pega. So we will be learning starting from the way that how to create by ourselves. Okay. I will come to controls and I'll explain you everything. Just hold on and look at here. Do not bother, do not focus on navigations at all. Okay. Only bother about the concept. Look at here now. I am trying to create a section. Don't worry about navigations at all. Okay. So I'll explain everything in detail. So if I wanted to go ahead and create user interface in Pega, So Pega provides different types of rules, out of which one of the rule that we are seeing here is called as section. If we want to create UI, we need to create a rule called section. Property, what we have in Pega, that same we call it as a variable in other programming languages, but the terminology in Pega is property. See, whenever you are going to create user interface, you need controls. See here, this UI is going to provide controls. Text input control you want, you just drag and drop the text input control. Suppose if you go to HTML, you need to write the programming code, I mean like HTML code for the controls. Suppose if you wanted to go ahead and or take text area, you can take text area. You wanted to go ahead and get the date picker, you can go ahead and add date time. See this control, when I double click on it, okay, there is no property associated. At runtime, if you wanted to just hold the value what is being entered by the users in this control, we need to make sure to associate this control with a property. Some property as per your business requirement, you will be doing it. So now the value that is entered in this UI, this user interface control at runtime is going to be held by this property during the application running. So properties are the entities which are going to hold the values at runtime. So the same what we have, we are referring property here. We used to call them as variables in other programming languages. And control is something how it is going to appear. See, the other way around, I'll tell you. See, whatever I have told you just now is you are going to drag and drop the control. After you drag and drop the control, double click on the control and map the property. Other than this, I can show you the other way around. Just hold on. Okay. Just hold on. Operator. Okay, just look at here. Suppose I have properties created. Let's say, for example, I created a property. This is py title, py first name. These are the properties. Don't ask me what is that py. Focus on what I am teaching here. So look at here. I am going to drag and drop here one property. So how did I drag and drop this property? I am going to pick the property before the property name 6 dots are there, right? When my mouse becomes with 4 arrow marks like this, I'm going to pick this property with my left mouse cursor and then drag and drop here. So when I drag and drop, okay, just let me go ahead and say okay. And here it is automatically adding a control. So if I am going to open this py first name property, look at here. Oh, this one is not defined. By default, it is taking text input. No problem. So when you drag and drop the property, it is automatically it is getting assigned to one property. Don't bother about this test and all. Just bother only about property. See, there are two ways. One is you can drag and drop an empty control, and after the empty control, double click on it and map it to a property. Or you can just directly, if you have property created, if you go to class rule form class, you can directly drag and drop the property. Either of the two ways we can do. See, you can ignore about drag and drop. We always bother about getting the control and mapping the control back to properties by selecting the property from the drop down. This is the approach we are going to follow. That is the easiest way than drag and drop the property. Why it is easiest way? It will be highly difficult to find out the properties from different classes when you join an enterprise application. There will be n number of properties. Always it is better you go ahead and get the control added and then select the property. See, if we want to design user interface in Pega, so far we had come across with two rules. One is property. So first we need to go ahead and create all the properties and make sure you have all the properties created. And next we need to create another rule called section. This is the rule section. So then you need to create a section to design user interface. You can either drag and drop the properties onto the section or add the controls into the section and then map the properties to the controls of the section. So control is nothing but the UI display, like text input. మీరు క్లాసెస్ వినట్లేదా నేను చెప్పేటప్పుడు? I clearly told multiple times, properties will be available and we do create by ourselves when we are going to see the way of learning by ourselves. Again and again, if you are asking the same, that meaning that you are not following the class. Please completely focus here and listen to the each and every word. These are the something provided by Pega. We will also see how to create by ourselves. Okay. So properties are just like variables which are going to hold the values at runtime. When we are going to take the properties here into the UI, it is going to appear like a control. Okay, so control means text input control, checkbox control, radio buttons, something like that. So at runtime, the values that we enter into the UI, that will be held by the associated property to the control. Okay, further what will happen we can discuss later. So we are going to see how to create properties by ourselves, and we are going to see how to create section by ourselves. So there are multiple rules which we need to create in order to make the user interface part of transaction. If you're going to design a transaction, then the transaction is going to have UI, business logic, and database, and transaction can be designed by process. So when we are designing UI, we need to create first properties, and then we need to create section, add the properties into the section. Okay, this is what we are going to do. We are going to see. Every one of you kindly make sure that you are following what I am saying. Okay, completely you focus here and follow whatever I am saying. See here, whenever we are going to create properties, okay, so not only property, anything you create, any rule you create, property, or you create section, or you create anything. See, while creating, see here, so it should have a name. Okay, I'm giving, let's say for example, first name, first space name, and then tab out. Automatically you got identifier here. The one what you have given here is label, and the identifier is the actual name of the respective rule called property. Okay, that we are trying to create. So I already told you, right, previously, label and identifier. Every rule in Pega is going to have a label and identifier. So identifier is the actual name that will be used by PRPC in order to understand this rule, and label is the one which is for display purpose. I told you an example. Suppose you have students in a classroom, every student is going to have a name. And what about the ID? There will be an ID, student ID. So if a college has to recognize in the system of college, a college is going to recognize a student by identifier only, student ID, not by the name. So the system is going to recognize every role. The process command is going to recognize every role by its identifier. And for the display purpose, we need labels. Suppose in the UI, if you are displaying in a form like first name without spaces, that will not be good. So first name with space between first and name will be good while you are displaying. So process commander is going to identify the rules by identifier, and there the labels will be there for the display purpose. So identifier should not have any spaces in this. It should be a single string, okay, without any spaces, something like that. See, whenever you are creating any rule, suppose if I am creating a property or if I am creating a section, so whenever I am creating this, apart from giving the label and identifier, you should also choose the context. There are three parameters in the context: parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3. Third parameter we are not at all going to discuss now. It will take around 10 to 15 days to come to third parameter and get the explanation. Till then, every one of you must follow the documents of screenshots, and exactly what we are doing in the screenshots of documents, you need to follow the same. Do not ask me anything about this parameter till next 10 to 15 days. Only concentrate and focus on these two parameters and understand. Third parameter, you follow the document. See, the first parameter in the context is going to tell you about application. This is the name of the application. You remember we created two applications. One is Geico Auto Insurance and the second one is Geico Insurance. Okay, let me ask you one question here. So I logged into implementation application, right? IMPL application. When I log into IMPL application, here I am getting three applications. You can see one is Pega platform, another one is Geico Insurance, and the third one is Geico Auto Insurance. Geico Auto Insurance is the one which is implementation application, and Geico Insurance is the one which is framework. I'm sorry. framework application, correct? And Pega platform is what provided by Pega. That is also one framework provided by Pega. So now my question is, when we log into implementation application, can we access framework application context and its classes? Yes or no?
Yes.
We should be able to do it. So I logged into implementation application. I wanted to create something in the framework application context. You can see here, I have accessibility to create either in implementation application context or in the framework application context. So what did we discuss during the initial classes? Just hold on. Look at here. Look at here. So we discussed like application is something which will have some of the components. The components can be anything. Here when you come to Pega, the components we understand like roles. So we have already discussed in the past classes like application will be there. Inside application you have classes, and inside classes you have components. Here those are roles. Anything you create, any role you create. So the rules which you create, which are going to define the functional aspects of our application business processing, should have to be created in the classes. Classes will be there in the application. We have already seen we created application, and inside application we have got classes. While you are creating any rule further going forward, so process command is going to ask you this rule you wanted to create in which application context. Do you want to create in framework application context, or do you want to create in the implementation application context? Which means that you wanted to place this rule inside which application. Everyone clear with this? Every one of you?
Yes.
Okay, so in which one you wanted to create? It is up to your business requirement. As per your business requirement, you are going to choose to proceed with the application in which you want to create. After that, it will ask you what is the class inside which class you wanted to create. If I go ahead and click on view all here and click the down arrow, you will see all the classes of your applications. See, you wanted to create this particular role inside an application and inside some class. Any class you can choose as per your business requirement. You'll come to know which class to be chosen. And for this rule set option, you need to follow the screenshots for some time. So any rule that you are creating, property, section, flow, action, flow, or any rule while you are creating the rule, you need to make sure that the rule should be created in the context of an application and class. Means the rule should be created inside some application of some class. Okay, so then the rule will be inside a class, classes will be inside application. Of course, the rule also will be there inside some application. Everyone clear with this point? Context to two parameters. The first one is application and the second one is class. Everyone clear? All of you should be responding.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what we have diagrammatically.
Here concrete or abstract, sir?
Which one?
When it comes to this apply
Depends on the business requirement. Based on that, where to create, we need to decide and we need to choose the appropriate classes. Okay, so I'll tell you what are the appropriate classes to be chosen in next few minutes. Up to this, you understand? So far you understand, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is about, see, any rule you are creating in Pega, you need to make sure the rule should have a name and it should be created inside an application and inside a class. Okay, while you are creating, which application context you need to choose, which class you need to choose. Okay, so far we have discussed about these three classes only: GEIC, Geico Auto, Work. These are the three classes. See, we have already discussed about the inheritance. Okay, so now you guys have to respond. I'm going to ask you questions now. See, we have class A, which is the topmost class in our application, and under this we have B, under B we have C class. So given a business requirement, how would you know in which class you have to create the respective rule? Suppose you are trying to create a property or you are trying to create a section as part of your business requirement. So when you are creating a property or section as part of your business requirement, how would you know what is the class in which you need to create? Because you have a provision of accessing 3 classes here. When you have a provision of accessing 3 classes, out of the 3 classes, which class you are going to use? How do you know? Anyone can respond.
Class A.
How?
By knowing the common functionalities.
By knowing the
Common
functionality.
functionality.
Yes, by knowing the functionality and its scope of accessibility, right? And its scope of accessibility in your application. Suppose the component that you are going to create, the rule that you are going to create, it has to be accessible everywhere throughout the application. Okay, everywhere throughout the application. So which level you are going to create in that case?
Class A only, sir.
What do you call that class A? Which level is it? I am not bothered about concrete or abstract.
Organization.
About concrete or abstract. I'm going to bother about level. Organization. So anything that should be accessible throughout the application anywhere, you would create that in the organization class. Now you have 2 applications to access while creating. One is implementation application and the other one is framework application. Now you need to tell me where you are going to create, in the implementation application context or framework application context. Which context you are going to use?
Framework, sir.
Framework.
Yeah, what is the reason that you have told framework?
Because it can be used in implementation applications also.
Just hold on, not multiple people. Someone who has responded to say as framework can respond. Next time other people.
If we can create a framework application, we can access also class C type, sir. C type application.
It's not about class, it is about application this time. You told you are going to create in the framework. Creating in the framework application that can be accessed.
Also implementation application.
Yes, that can be accessed not only in the framework application, but also under implementation application, which means that under a framework, if I have 5 implementation applications, okay, if I have created 5 implementation applications from a framework application, if I create any rule in the framework application, that can be accessed into all implementations. So the common components you will be creating in the framework applications, this is what we have discussed. So whenever you are going to create any rule, okay, in the organization class, the practice is generally we do use framework application, but that is not always. Again, it depends on specific business, but we'll come to that point later. So now you are going to create in the organization class. If you are creating in the organization class and framework application, that will be accessible anywhere throughout the application of your of the framework, as well as all the implementations which are being created under the framework. Everyone clear? Everyone, so far, are you clear of what I have told?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, fine. Thank you so much. Yes, go ahead. Yes, right. Okay, thank you. Now look at here. You are going to choose to decide the class based on its scope of accessibility. Everyone should understand this. It is not static that for this you create organization, for this you create under division, or for this you create in the implement. It is not static. When you get a business requirement, so based on your application knowledge that you have and based on the business requirement, one has to decide in which application context and in which class it has to be created. That too, again, depending on the scope of the accessibility of that feature. If that feature has to be accessible only to one specific implementation, appropriately you are going to create in the implementation application only and in the respective classes. And if it has to be accessible to all implementations throughout all the applications as well as throughout framework application, then you would be choosing the top level framework level and the top level classes. So there is no static thing while you are going to choose the application and the classes. Okay, at what level you choose, that level may be abstract or concrete, it depends. Okay, everyone clear? So now, so while we are going to create properties and sections, so what we are going to see now, we are going to see properties, how to create, and how to create a section if time permits. First we are going to deal with properties. So when you are creating either properties or sections, or in future any rule that you are going to create, it must be created in the context of application and classes. So generally now I can log into framework application and I can create whatever I want. But anyhow, I can access the context of framework application by logging into implementation itself. I do not want to log in back to framework. As I have logged into implementation, from here itself, I am going to create the required things. Look at here once. See from here, if you want to access the framework applications, every one of you focus here. Okay. So just backspace this framework application classes. That class group is going to have additional FW. Is this the one framework application class group, the one where I have mouse over? Every one of you, is this the same? Yes. Which we have in the framework? I can choose it. Yes. See, anytime if you log into implementation application and go to App Explorer, automatically implementation application related class group gets loaded. If I wanted to access any other classes, I can click on black space here and I can access any other classes. But every time accessing this, coming back and accessing like this will be difficult. So once you choose here for the first time, see beside the class name, you have a pin icon. If you click on the pin icon, it is going to add a shortcut here, so that every time when you log in, it will load implementation application and framework application classes are loaded into shortcuts here. So from here itself we can access. Everyone clear with this pinning? Do I need to give a screenshot for this pin process? Or you remember it?
Number of application remains same here, 3 applications when we log into the framework application.
3 applications only, correct.
So, but it should reflect 2 applications.
Why it should reflect? If you log into framework application or implementation?
Framework application, right? Here we are going to
log into implementation now. If you log into framework, it will show 2. I logged into implementation, right? So I have I'm just accessing framework application related classes here, and I put that in the shortcut because I do not want to every time backspace and all. I made it in the shortcut just for ease of accessibility. Shortcuts, why do we create? Ease of accessibility. Without going to original place, you are going to access it directly from here, right? The same way. Everyone clear? Just for your information, this one. Every one of you.
Just by this way, we can only access the classes of the framework application, right?
What do you mean by only accessing classes of framework application?
Because here you have wrote down here Geico FW, right? This one, that is framework.
Yes.
And the above the application number of applications showing 3 applications, right?
You can access even Pega platform applications. When you can access framework application, above framework we have Pega platform, right? Even that can also be accessed. You want to access the work dash class which is there in the Pega platform, you can go ahead and access work dash cover dash, and you can pin those in the shortcuts if you wanted to use it. But as of now, we are not going to use anything OOTP, as I have told. That's why we are going to focus only on the ones which we have created by ourselves.
Okay.
Okay, up to this everyone clear so far? Okay, now we are going to see how to create properties as a practical. So in a practical, if you have to create a property, how to create it? Maybe time permits, I'll create, otherwise we'll do tomorrow only. But today, look at here now. See, if I am going to ask you to create user interface in Pega, mainly first we need to remember to create 2 rules. One is properties. Properties either you create or either that might be available in Pega. So we are going to use the properties provided by Pega later. As an initial learner, we are going to see how to create properties by ourselves. So the first rule that we need to create, that is property. So we need to create one or more properties as per your business requirement. After the properties are created, the next rule which we need to create is section. The next rule which we need to create is section. So after we create section, we need to add the controls into the section. We need to add the controls into the section and map the controls back to properties. Now someone please tell me, why do we need to map the control to a property in the UI of section? What is the reason we have to map the control to a property?
So that we can store the value.
Old values at the runtime.
All the values.
Values to hold the
Values.
okay, to hold the values at runtime. So the value what you have entered in that particular control at runtime will be held by the associated property. Okay. Now when you create a section, you can add the controls and map it back to properties, and the controls that you are going to add should be added inside the layout. So a section is going to have by default a layout. By the term layout, where did you come across with this term layout? Mainly in your real life, where do you come across with the term layout?
Real estate layouts.
When we are designing something.
Real estate. So when you are going to talk about the land, okay, the land is going to be divided into layouts. What is the reason to have layouts? Can you tell me what does the layout provides there in the real estate?
Partitioning.
Partitioning and structuring. In other words, we can say alignment. The alignment of each individual plot is going to be done by dividing it into layouts. Make sense? Everyone clear? Is that what the fact in the real world? Right? The same concept will never change. See, whenever you create a section, inside section you'll be getting automatically a layout. We're not going to bother about types of layouts and all, and inside the layout you will be adding the controls. So when you are going to add the controls inside layout, a layout will have the options related to alignment of the controls. Means how this control should be aligned and appear in the UI at runtime. See, if I'm going to choose inline grid double, you can see here inline grid double, when I choose, you are getting 2 columns. So you have a number of controls. Let me add more number of controls. Like this. If you are adding, these will come automatically gets aligned into 2 columns to have. Suppose if I use inline grid triple, what is happening now? Can someone please guess and tell me what is going to happen?
Triple input box.
You will see 3 columns and n number of rows, depends on the number of controls that you add inside. See, this is how it is. Not only inline grid double and triple. If you go to the layout format, you can choose other. In the other, if you click the down arrow here, there are so many other formats. Okay, everyone clear? So you can just play around with these options. It looks like this. Something I have chosen, the alignment got changed. So if you want to align the controls in a specific structure, you can go ahead and do it by going through the layout properties. The primary thing that the layout can be used as, layout is going to give the alignment of the controls when you choose different options in the layout. Not only the layout structuring the controls, but also you can add header text. Okay, something like this. Look at here. Once I add this, it is going to add a title in the UI. Suppose if when you go to Naukri or when you go to Indeed and try to upload your profile there, you will see first in a screen you will be seeing first your personal details, side heading, and there will be some controls, and the next you are going to see employment details and controls, education details, controls. Like this, those are called header text. Whatever you see, header text also can be given by using the layout. Everyone clear about layout?
Yes.
Okay, So I am going to share you a document related to the discussion what we had today. That is this document I will be sharing. So this is what we have already discussed. Look at here. Understanding the basic rules of Pega. So what are the basic rules that we use in Pega? So at the very beginning as a learner, those are properties, section, flow action, and flow. We did not discuss about these two. We will be discussing tomorrow. Today we discussed only few basic details about properties. While you are going through this document to go through the theory content, look at here. Property. Property is just like a variable in other programming languages. It holds values. It's associated with name. It is been associated with the name, and it is been associated with a property type. I have explained you already. Whenever you create any rule, it must be having one name. And in case of property, it will have a name and a type. Type means text type, decimal type, or date type, something like that. It will be associated. And also there will be a control. What is a control? Control means user interface controls like text input, radio button, checkbox button, like this. Whenever you are going to use this property in the UI, how it should be appearing in the UI, that is being identified by control. Okay, I'll show you practically while we are working. Look at here. In the topics, whatever I have given here, there will be one point highlighted in red color. You can ignore about this, reading this point for now. I'll tell you when you have to come back and read it. The one which is highlighted with red color, you ignore reading this for now, because technically you may not be able to understand this statement even when you read. So ignore the one which is highlighted in red color. Coming back to the next one, see here, this can be created under data model category. See, if you're going to scroll down here, you will see the navigation also how to create. So the navigation, what you are seeing, you are going to right click on the class name and create. If you want to create anything, you need to go into create. There you see a menu. This menu, the second one is called categories menu. Every rule that you create, property, section, flow action, flow, decision rules, declarative rules, any rules that are there in Pega, you should be creating the rules this way. Not all, multiple ways are there. When you go through this way, the second menu you see category, all these rules are being categorized. Okay, this menu is called as rule category menu, and the third menu is the actual rule type property. So whenever I tell you, if you read the document, in the document it is written as property can be created under data model category. When you read that sentence, it will talk about the navigation. Property can be created under data model category. In order to create, I need to right click on the class group name and go to create. Property can be created under data model category. Then you need to bother about the category. This is the data model, and you're talking about property. So this is the navigation. That statement, something similar to the rule can be created under so and so category, is going to talk about the navigation. Everyone clear with this point? Every one of you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, look at here now, the document and all. See, that navigation is shown here just for your information and understand. See here, now a property is going to have a name, as I told you, and property is going to have a type. Type means date value or integer value, text value, and UI control. This identifies how this property should be visible when it is added into design phase of the UI. Design phase of the UI, what does it mean? Section, right? So whenever you are going to take this property into section, how this should be visible to business users? It should be visible like a text input, or it should be visible like a radio button and all. It will be decided by control. And table type, one more parameter is there called table type. See, if I am going to create a drop down, if I want to create a drop down, let's say states drop down is there. Okay, so at runtime, whenever user is going to click on the drop down, it should populate all the states, like maybe Indian states or whatever the country related, all the states, out of which one he is going to select. The states what to be populated in the drop down can be defined in the table type, which I will show you practically. Okay, now the next one is section. Section is a HTML rule. What do you mean by HTML rule? Can someone please guess and tell me? HTML means, what is the purpose of HTML language?
It deals with UI.
Just for
In order
front
to
end development.
Front-end development. In order to design user interface, you need HTML programming language, correct? In Pega, you are going to create a rule called section. That's why we call section is a HTML rule. Why section is a HTML rule? Because it deals with the design of UI. HTML coding will get generated automatically in the background whenever you create a section. So section is a HTML rule used to design user interface. Again, here you see this red color statement. You ignore reading while you are going through this document, and we can read it later. Now it says section can be created under user interface category. Section can be created under user interface category. Can someone please tell me about the navigation, how to create a section? Create. After that, what is the category I should get into?
User interface.
User interface.
User interface. Then what is the next one?
Section.
So that statement, for all the rules whatever I have mentioned here, a rule can be created under some category. If you read that statement, you should be able to understand the navigation, how to create it. Okay, everyone clear? A section is going to have layout. Layout is like a table element in HTML, which can be used to align the controls. How do you use align the controls in HTML programming language? When you are going to write your HTML coding, we use table element. Table element we use and align it. But here, layout is like a table element HTML programming language, which can be used to align the controls of the UI. A section can hold properties into, just hold on, layout and associate them with controls. A section can hold properties into its layout and associate them with the controls. So every section that you create is going to have controls. Controls will get associated with properties, mapped to properties. So you need to read up to this one only today. We will discuss about flow action and all tomorrow after we create properties. So today we have understood and discussed about how the data is going to flow in a business application where you are going to have user interface, business logic, and database. And after that, we have seen if you want to create user interface in Pega, so what are the rules mainly you need to create? The two main rules which we have discussed are properties and section, and the navigation also we had got, and practically we do create the same tomorrow. Okay, so do not bother about any navigations which I have shown you today, like layout or header or creating section or creating property and choosing this and that options. Only the concept you need to understand, and you need to understand this document when you read it. Okay, and practically the navigations and all you'll be getting by while practicing. That we are going to see tomorrow. Everyone clear so far? Every one of you?
Yes.
Right? So while the classes are going on, do not ask any questions related to something which we do not. Hold on. Mute from your end, please. There is a lot of background noise. Do not guess by yourself something how it will be if I am going to do it like this. Don't ask this type of questions. Those type of questions you ask me when you join the class before the session, 15 minutes before I'm opening the meeting, right? Okay, that time you ask me. Anything which is your guess, don't ask me. Only the subject which we are discussing, anything you did not understand within the subject, then you can go ahead and ask me the doubt in the same class while the class is going on. Okay, and also one more thing is, do not post the question simply during the class is going on. Once after I complete something, not at the end of the class. Maybe if I am going to talk about something, I take 10 minutes, let's say. After 10 minutes, once I think it is been completed explaining the specific content, then I will come back and ask you, you understand or not? So that time you are going to ask me any doubt or question. And one more important thing is, never ask me to repeat once again from the beginning. Asking like that, my impression on the person is he did not listen to anything. If you have listened to this, maybe something you don't understand, you can explain me, like you have told so and so, I did not understand what you have told, and can you please explain again? Simply you don't ask me, please repeat once again, which means that you did not listen to me at all. If you are expecting me to repeat once again from the beginning whatever I have told, explain me whatever I have told in the class, and then only you ask me out of which what you did not understand. So your concentration and your focus is 100% required here. So do not get deviated during the class. 1 hour keeping the attention here on the class is really difficult, but I will make you to listen to the class really if you have interest. Okay. So the points what we have discussed today, while you are going through this document, remember one thing, do not simply read the document. Open PRPC environment and read a statement there and the navigations given for the property and all. You just go through it and try to navigate here. You need not to create. Try to navigate the same way what is being showed when you are reading the point. Property can be created under data model category. Reading and remembering is not a good practice, not at all a good practice. Okay, while you are reading, you need to understand. What you understand, you try to see like this and experience. It's not only theory document, you open, read it and leave it. Open the PRPC environment and try to experience of what you are reading, but the practical we do tomorrow. Make sense, everyone? Clear? That's how you need to read, not simply opening the document. Okay, so we will continue tomorrow. I will open 15 minutes before. So if it is raining heavily or maybe somewhat it is raining, I may not be able to come to institute during that time. So you need to go through this one, like WhatsApp group, and follow me in the WhatsApp group to see any update from me. Tomorrow if it is raining, okay, that will be a problem for everyone to travel. If it is not raining, I will be available in the classroom. Okay. Thank you for joining. We will continue tomorrow. 15 minutes before, you ask me any questions related to what we have discussed today.